And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, Prime Minister's Questions wasn't on this week, so I was kind of like, what can I make a stream on? I know. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail of all places. That always has some top quality political lols. And I was not disappointed. As you can tell from my rather elaborate thumbnail, we're going to be talking about Jeremy Corbyn again. Yeah. This is exciting because by the end of it, hello Laura, I get to figure out whether or not Jeremy Corbyn is an idiot or a traitor to his country. I'm inclined this early on to already say I think he's just a massive idiot. And yes, it is only good for wrapping fish. I would argue chips as well, with a little vinegar. I'm not one of those idiots that puts so much on that the paper is soaked through. Yeah. Or you use it for puppies when they're training them to use the toilet outside and they go inside. Yeah. Anyway, so this week there was an article, and before we get into it, I want to cover a few points about Jeremy Corbyn and then cover that article. And I kind of forgot to crop the images. I've been playing a video game and I got sidetracked. Let's go with that. I lost track of time. Lost track of time. Yeah, that's my excuse for today. Ordinarily I would have been on this, but in any case, as you can tell from the title, it's about whether or not he's been helping the commies, the dreaded red commies. Now, before that, I want to address two comments I got on two videos I just did. Hello Malachite. So, this is the first comment. It's not related, but I want to address it. This is in relation to a video I did covering TERFs attacking trans activists. And the trans activists actually getting violent first. You are retarded. There is no such thing as trans women. It is an oxymoron. I don't think Garuda Legends. Oxymoron means what you think it means. They are men in women's clothing. That's, depending on the medical condition and whether people do it for fun. You have dysphoria, and then you have transvestite. Not the same thing. They have no grounds for any civil right. So what, we're taking away, in your mind, men's rights? Interesting. You sound gay, well, my accent after all, defending these male cross-dresses. It's cross-dressers, and it's not the same thing as someone who's trans. No wonder why you hate the TERF. What a cuck. I'm sure Laura in the chat can attest to me being a massive cuck. But I'm not one anyway. So the next one, and this is related to Labour. This was actually on my last video. I don't really mind this comment so much because I actually get the point, but I want to offer a response to it. And I like Glenn because he leaves comments quite often. Britain is going to have to invest in itself to get out of the hole it is in, and I, to an extent, agree. But this is where... bitch. This is where I have to disagree. I have to sort of like point out an obvious issue. You can invest in an economy if you want. However, Labour's approach to investing isn't to invest what we have, which is the smart move. If you have the money, invest it. Their solution, which I don't really think is investing technically, is to borrow hundreds of billions to invest that, or quotes, invest, when actually they want to buy back privately owned services that were once publicly owned but were sold because they were not very efficient because we weren't investing in them because we didn't have the money to invest in them. Yes. So as far as I'm concerned, if you've got the money, if we have the money to invest in it, then yes, we should. But if we have to borrow hundreds of billions to buy back something, to then not be able to invest in it because we have no money because of the debt interest we're paying on what we've borrowed, then it's not really investment at all. Which is why, and there were other comments on the video telling me what austerity actually is. I know what austerity actually is, and the Conservatives had to introduce a form of it. And as far as whether or not I'm employable to the other guy who left that lovely comment, I was a night shift manager, I guess. The day shift fucked up, and everyone on nights lost their job. Whether I was employable or not, I was, because I got a job straight away, I think. But circumstances are important. Context is, for the most part. And that's actually another thing we get to address with Jeremy Corbyn, because there are a number of instances of things he's done that sound wrong. But it's not all that it seems. So, you will soon be competing, to a higher degree, with the wider world in trade, and you are at a severe disadvantage with a sluggish economy and no obvious incentives to invest in your private sector. Actually, that's technically not right. We have already had deals offered to us, so we're not really struggling in that regard. Our economy, while slow, is not as slow as quite a number of other nations, including America. And the incentive to invest, I would argue, there is plenty of investment to be made when you know that you're not going to be taxed into oblivion, which is what would happen, and in fact it is happening, in countries like Scotland, which has seen a massive amount of taxes being applied to people who want to start businesses, because Scotland needs to raise more money, because they're stupid. No offence to Scottish people, it's your government. They are an embarrassment. Lower taxes means they are more inclined to stay in your country, which means they'll actually pay their way. And of course, let's not forget here, during Labour's 13 years, they never taxed Google. Not once. But the Conservatives did. And I'm not a Conservative voter. I'm not a Labour voter, Lib Dem voter, UKIP voter. I'm pointing out this is an obvious... Wow. Like last week, the kinky is coming out. Fantastic. Yeah, whatever. Right. That said, running the entrepreneurs out of the country would seem a little counterproductive. It is. You have to offer them an incentive. The incentive would be a lower tax. But you could be all equally poor. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, that would happen if we had a socialist government. Taking away everything that anyone worked for. And the direct consequence of that would be no one is rich but those champagne socialists in number 10. Or Jeremy Corbyn and every other member of his little lovely shadow cabinet, whose dicks he will inevitably suck. Hello. So, next on the list, is it this one? Oh god, have I ballsed this up already? Right, there's that, right, close that. So, Jeremy Corbyn. Gorgeous image, right? Yes. You can see his age, the beard has stayed. He's aged, well, he hasn't really changed much, has he? Now, I'll give you the choice. I can leave these images up on screen for the whole stream, because I haven't got the article's images here for you. I'll have to read them from somewhere else, which have some sources. They're in the description as well, along with loads of other things I think are interesting. Jeremy Corbyn... Oh, so I'll let you choose whether or not you think, you want this on the screen or not. Or something else I think I have. Where is it? That one. Yeah, this is my favourite one. This image has been regularly cropped, and without any context, it seems to suit the thumbnail quite nicely. Although I still think, I did a pretty bang-up job putting him on James Bond. Alright, I'll get rid of it. Yeah, there you go. You don't have to suffer, Laura. So, I wrote down a list of things that make me question Jeremy Corbyn. So, I've written here, things Corbyn has done that has me question his intelligence. Number one, and she's in his shadow cabinet. This one astonishes me. Comrade Corbyn, yes. He wants to serve Mother Russia well. So the first thing he's done, and I don't know if any people know this, he banged Diane Abbott. Diane Abbott is the retard who can't count and thinks that because you criticise the fact that she can't count, all the while she's rolling her eyes into the back of her head like the Undertaker, thinks you're a massive racist for calling her out for not being able to count. She's innumerate. She thought you needed 10 billion, or was it 100 million or something ridiculous for 10,000 police officers. It was ridiculous. She cannot count. Yeah, And there was an article, a few articles I wish I'd grabbed the links for, with his ex-wife talking about how she's a homewrecker. And she is. You have to question whether or not Diane Abbott's in the position she's in because of her skill as a bullshit artist, or because she sucked his peen. Yeah. Okay, so number 2 on this list. He called Hamas and Hezbollah his friends. Now, there is context to this. For those who don't know, firstly, the Labour Party are regularly touted as anti-Semitic. Quite often. In fact, one of the people in their party, Ken Livingstone, he was one of the first to call it out, even though he himself said some really stupid shit. The fact is, excuse me, when you have groups like Hezbollah and Hamas who openly call for the deaths of Jews and you call them friends, even in context, which there is some, it is still a case of you're supporting or trying to encourage discourse between two groups. And I know why you did this. You wanted to encourage discourse between two extremist groups to get them to stop. Because you, and I'll get to the point later, you don't like violence. That much is very clear. And you've said it on multiple occasions, which is a weakness of yours. Yeah, I remember John Major fucking Edwina Curry, I believe. Edwina Curry. And I believe she was on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and then John Major just went back to eating cucumber sandwiches and watching cricket all day. What an exciting man he is. Far more exciting than I am. And he had glasses bigger than most people's heads. Must have got the fashion advice from Dennis Taylor. So the context for it is, he invited Hamas, or people from Hamas and Hezbollah, to come to Parliament so that he could get them to talk, to start a peace process. Now, in the description I've linked to PMQ. This particular PMQ was only a week before a Home Office Select Committee started an investigation into the Labour Party's anti-Semitism, which has cropped up over the years repeatedly. Recently with Naz Shah wanting to move Israel into, I believe, the middle of bumblefuck America. Like, literally in the middle, somewhere in a desert somewhere. That was her solution. Or was it New Mexico? Even that's America still, but I can't remember the state. I just can't remember. I did a video on that as well, and it was amusing. I couldn't stop laughing. Oh, look, there's a Muslim MP, and she wants to move Israel. Yeah, that's going to work. Genius. And in that PMQs, every time David Cameron stands up, no matter, even though they're celebrating, they're talking about giving Leicester City Football Club props for winning the Premier League. Yeah, that is how long ago it was. What's up, Mitch? 6 times I think Cameron gave Corbyn a chance to denounce it, but Corbyn skirted it. And Corbyn, that'd be interesting. That'd be very interesting, Cthulhu Prophet. Mr. Prophet Cthulhu, yes. I'm not so fond of socialism in that form, but we'll see. Every time Corbyn stood up, he didn't answer it. He didn't retract his statement about calling Hezbollah and Hamas friends. And I got it. Cameron could have absolutely hammered him, and he did, to an extent. But with context applied, yes, while both groups being totally intolerable for what they believe and what they do, he was trying to get them to start peace talks. I don't accept that as that overall. I still think, and I agree with him when he said that with hindsight he would not have used the same phrase. For anyone who wants to know now, he does not consider Hezbollah or Hamas his friends, thankfully. They're not on Facebook with him anymore. I'm sure he's very sad. The third thing that makes me question his intelligence, and I showed the image of it, he gave a speech surrounded by commie flags, and it's beautiful. The fourth one, this is the big one that really bugs me, is that he's openly spoken about being a pacifist. Now, he has been, I think a female reporter once called him a little bitch, and he did look like he turned around and got all leery, and when he did, so people had to usher him out, and it was quite funny because this sort of like links up with the whole of him, the accusations, the claims of him being nothing more than an old grandpa being pushed around by his party. He pretty much is. I'm sorry, but if you can't beat Theresa May, how weak are you? Okay, so the fifth thing, he did not condemn the IRA. He has been challenged on this so many times, and there are Sky interviews, I think, and I've linked it in the description. He was, he never condemned the IRA. Never did. In fact, I think he had meetings with them. Which makes you question quite a lot of things about him, let's face it. He did. He did. That's quite right. And I'm not going to... This is where it gets... this is where it gets really silly, because I got asked about this a lot in the comments of my recent Labour video. About why I wasn't railing on the Conservatives. The simple answer is because I can do that in a separate video. I don't have to constantly go backwards and forwards between both those two parties to make points attacking each party. I could do that all day. Yes, it is a little understatement. And I think, yeah, okay, so he's not a very loyal citizen. He does talk about openness and inclusivity and being, I guess, more globalist. But his first job, if he wants to be Prime Minister, is not to everyone else in the world, it's to the people in this country. I don't think he gets that. And that's, with the pacifist thing, he doesn't seem to get it. And I want to focus on the pacifist thing a little longer, actually, go back to that. When I know I didn't support the Syria airstrikes, to be honest. But his excuses given were bullshit. And if I could find... And the Syria debate, I'll leave it in the description when I find it. As far as I was concerned, I didn't support it, but I got the point. Whereas Corbyn didn't argue against it well enough. Hell, his own party were in support of it. I remember Hilary Benn, who was in the shadow cabinet, I believe. Up until that point, he gave a great speech about why we should. Corbyn, if you're a pacifist and you're in charge of a country which has a military and you're under attack and the options of talking are gone, what do? You don't hold up a white flag, which I think you might. You're supposed to defend your country and your people, and I don't think you'd do that. It would be interesting to see how you would, in fact, behave in that position. The final thing I put, because I didn't have time to write any more, was that he, although he didn't say he would get rid of it, during an NME interview, he indicated that he would address the student debt issue. So the sixth point is that he misled students in the 2017 election. He didn't. They then took what he'd said as a way of saying, "Oh yes, I'm going to wipe all your debt," which he probably would want to do. He did indicate in an interview, another one, that what he'd do is he'd introduce legislation, and I think the money would raise some additional taxes or something, and that money would be used to help students out. Either way, it couldn't have happened. Couldn't have worked. It would have required borrowing more. It's like McDonald's policies for getting back rail. It's just not feasible. It's very irresponsible to do what he wants to do, and that's just spend, spend, spend. I get that we should invest. I really do. But I do not believe for a second that the smart move would be to borrow money to then invest in it. Bye, Laura. Okay, so profit. I'm against wars with no price tag. I don't get why I paid towards the one. Yeah, I don't get it. I really don't. And the Iraq War. I remember. Okay, so Enter Shikari, this band I'm actually quite fond of. They're a very socialist band. They support Corbyn. But on their second album, they wrote a song called "Fanfare for the Conscious Man." And I believe the first verse is, "Our gracious queen should crush the crown, take a good fucking swing at Blair and Brown for leading our country into illegal warfare while passing it off that we're doing it because we care. Now preemptive wars are a redemptive cause. I've never heard such nonsense under international law. They think we have the right to reinforce democracy when we weaken ours every day with more hypocrisy. And I actually agree. No, you can't. You can't. Then again, I don't have... The student debt thing's interesting because my view on it was always I wanted to go and pay for it myself. So for about 6 years, I didn't sleep much. I mean, I got pretty nasty bags under my eyes because of it. I'm still proud that I did it and paid for it myself, because the consequence is that while I'm an insomniac, I still went and got what I needed. Got what I wanted, sorry. North Korea. Fucking hell. Yeah, North Korea. That's something special. And that's something for another day. So, I want to address the article I've got on the Daily Mail, and it is in the description. So, the first page reads, first part, Corbyn's meeting with a communist spy. Dun dun dun! I can't see the chat for a moment, I'm sorry. Labour leader met a Soviet agent from Czech security services during the Cold War and tipped him off about MI5 clampdown. This, along with the earlier comment about him not being so much about his country, does have you thinking, doesn't it? Is he a helpful idiot? Is he easily misled? Or is he just a fool? So, there are some, by the way, there are, on the article, there are some images from the evidence that is basically linked to a Sun article. The images are taken from, I believe, from a spy file that was released from the Czech. Yeah. So, where's the article? Here it is. Jeremy Corbyn warned a Soviet-backed spy about British intelligence activity at the climax of the Cold War, according to not-so-secret documents. I don't know why Corbyn was doing that. When looking for older instances of him in Parliament, the first one I found was him actually doing something I agreed with. He asked the first question to Margaret Thatcher, and he was talking about the homeless rate and people sleeping rough, and the government's policy on it at the time for addressing this. And I agree with Corbyn, believe it or not, on this particular instance, because the number went up from 2,500 to 25,000 people sleeping rough. That's quite the jump. And what he was talking about and questioning, he was proper aggressive about it. Mate, his voice has not changed in age at all, which is quite impressive when you think he's been in Parliament for a long, long time. And I think with that, he's got very. I don't mind that. I get his way of dealing with homeless, because he still holds that view today, which I don't entirely agree with. Because he wants to take away the homes from those that aren't using them. My view is, you bought the home, it's yours. It's not now the government's position or place to take something that's privately owned and redistribute it. People own homes around the world. That's up to them. Our job is to make new ones if we have the money to. Or, I don't know, or castrate everyone. I don't know. I kind of get the whole how to help, but his solution isn't one I support. But I couldn't find many of him. I couldn't find any, in fact. He doesn't really ask much in Parliament. He was genuinely, and this is something else, he voted against virtually everything that his party stood for a long, long time, including the Iraq War. So at least he has some credibility in that regard, but he votes against every war. Yeah. Let me check the chat. Sorry about this. Is that not... He's definitely not easily led. Is that not treason? He basically undermining MI6 and putting it... Okay, so yes. This is what... Okay, Mitch, I agree with you on this. And if you're interested, Mitch, I'm doing this on Discord. You're welcome to hit me up there and I'll gladly talk to you about it. If you just hit me up and I'll... Yeah, we can talk about this. Because I think if you're not in power, which you were not in 1986 when this happened, if you weren't in power and you then go behind your government, your country, to what? Think you can get peace? I don't know. There were operations taking place and you just went around it. And the evidence is that there is evidence to support this. There are plenty of images of documents that have been shared now. And this is why another reason I really wanted Prime Minister's questions this week. Because not only is Theresa May fucking up, but so is Corbyn. And I would love to know how Theresa May reacts to this. So I'm really excited to see what happens next week. And Mitch and I have talked about this before. I believe when Corbyn was first elected, we agreed that he was the wrong... He could have been the right leader, but he was at the wrong time. He's just not at this time. No. I feel bad for Corbyn in that regard because I don't see him as a Prime Minister in the future. I think he's just going to hold that seat for another 5 years and either die from old age or lose to May, or whoever it is that takes over from May, because I think she's also going to go. They're both so weak. Must be a pensioner thing, I don't know. In any case, the Labour leader met the Czech agent at least 3 times after being vetted by communist handlers in 1986. Wow, the world began like when he was doing this when I was born. You know, technically when the world actually started. I'm just saying. No, I'm not one of those people. The 2 meetings took place in the heart of British democracy, the House of Commons. Wow. I bet the Speaker at the time was so happy to find that out. They're probably in the House of Lords now these days, actually. And in the records of the meeting, an espionage agent noted how Mr. Corbyn was occasionally explosive. He was fairly volatile. If you ever saw him, I think I should probably go and find it and link it. That Prime Minister's question I told you about that he asked Thatcher, who was completely unmoved by what he asked her. He was aggressive. He's still aggressive now, but every 2 words he has to take a breath. I don't know if he smokes or something, but he really does put a lot of effort into maintaining his voice. Maybe that's an old age thing as well, I don't know. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything, but at the same time. Yeah. Okay, so a spokesman for Labour denied the party leader had met a spy and insisted he liaised with a diplomat instead. Unfortunately, that's not entirely true, really. The evidence produced from these, quotes, secret documents show he may have met with a spy from Czechoslovakia. Yeah. Mr. Corbyn allegedly provided the spies with material about the arrest of an East German, according to the documents leaked. The Labour leader was even given a 3-letter code name, Cobb. Isn't that chief on board in like a boat or submarine or something? Captain on board, chief on board? I don't know. I don't know why I gave him Cobb. Why don't you call him Feckless? There's a code name. No one thinks twice about Feckless. Okay, so the records summarised Mr. Corbyn's political output in 1986 towards the end of the Cold War. It said, and the images on the Sun article, negative towards USA as well as the current politics of the Conservative government. That's not a surprise. Who was the president in the US in '86? Was it was it the big-nosed guy? What's his name? Reagan? Was it him or was it Bush? I actually can't remember. My apologies. I'm not a buff on American history. You need to read more. You should. Falklands War was really fascinating. And the fact that Corbyn wanted to give it back is just stupid. Bush was 1988. Okay, so it was right. Was it Carter then? Fuck it. I don't know your presidents. But either way, he didn't support whoever your president was in 1986. And he didn't support Margaret Thatcher. Not many people did support Margaret Thatcher by 1986, let's face it. Yeah. I think, wasn't she out in... It was Reagan, okay. I think she was out in like 1989 or something, in 1990. Because Major was in charge for, I think, 7 years. Until Blair in 97. So it would have been 90... Yeah, so she was just starting to dwindle in popularity. She won in 88. Fuck me. Wow. Thank you for this history lesson, Mr. History Buff Mitch. I do actually appreciate that, because I wasn't sure. She wasn't... I remember the speech she gave when she stepped down in Parliament. Yeah, she got stabbed in the back pretty bad. I feel bad for her. And it's unsurprising, though, that he didn't support a Conservative Party, because if you've seen his interactions with the Conservative Party, it's quite hard to imagine parties working together now, especially because it's so divided. And I think it would be very interesting to see how... It would be very interesting to see how, if Corbyn was in charge, how he would try and work with other parties to, for example, get votes, get some legislation through. Because I still maintain I don't believe he could in fact get a majority government. It would be a minority or a coalition with the SNP, and he doesn't agree with them on a lot of things either. He did some video in Midlothian, I think it is, talking about how the SNP let the people down in that area of Scotland. Hardly a shocker. He really doesn't work well with people. So where's the rest? Oh yes. Scroll down. My mouse isn't working. Stop failing me. The document also suggests he was positive towards the Soviet bloc and was supporting the Soviet peace initiative. Mr. Corbyn was well informed of operatives in contact with anti-communist agencies. One of the first thoughts that came into my head when I read that was, so he was basically in support of the government controlling the people, because that seemed like an easy way out rather than giving the people, I don't know, freedom. Well, some freedom, you know, just a little. He'd rather just take the easy way out, which is let communism win, which I know, like, communists in space is big on commie stuff, but no. And there is a regular accusation leveled at fuck it, I can't remember. Oh yes, at the Labour Party, because they seem I know Sargon of Akkad does this. He just calls them communists, because while Corbyn claims to be a socialist, his shadow chancellor is a communist, or I believe he is. I can't remember. Also another thing of interest, the Labour Party, being the one of tolerance and of acceptance and inclusivity, were recently shot down, basically rebuked by the Equalities Commission yet again, because they keep doing things that aren't actually equal. They're discriminating. They're becoming synonymous with the word discrimination these days. I'm quite disappointed by their behaviour. I think it's a glaring weakness on their part that they can't simply stop the identity politics crap, because it's absolute dog shit. It's unnecessary. You don't need to do it to come up with decent legislation that treats people fairly. I say people as a whole and not individual little groups that think they need more laws and protections. If that's the case, I'm sure there are going to be many people identifying now, or maybe a couple, as unicorns. They need to be protected. And Corbyn, you should protect them. The Labour leader was the 326th coded source listed in documents relating to Operation Obrana, defence in Czech. There is an image. I can't read the language, obviously. I can't read Czech. It might be Slovak. Oh, I don't know if it's Czech or Slovakian, or if they merged the two and then created two new languages. I don't know. But there is some image related to it, and it's quite interesting to know that these records were made public, because and I know it's the Daily Mail and they love to rail on the ultra left, which I guess he could be considered ultra left. I don't know if that's the case or not. I think it's very interesting that he was trying to do what he might have perceived as good things, but actually he looks like a traitor to his own country in the process, which, if anything, makes him even more unelectable, except in his own constituency, which I'm not going to judge. The records which were found in the archives of the Czech secret police in Prague suggest the Labour leader was approached in 1986 by activists Tony Gilbert and Sandra Hodgson of the ultra-left-wing Liberation Movement. That's interesting, because to liberate and then to pass off information to a group that would instead just, I don't know, clamp down more on liberating people seems a bit counterproductive, don't you think? Let's check the chat again. For the many, not the few. Tell that to Spark. Yeah. The USSR thing was interesting. I think it's all because this is all reference to the Cold War, and Czechoslovakia, I believe, was a place people were sent as punishment. If I remember correctly, reference to... Oh shit, I don't remember entirely. I really should pay more attention to history. So, what was it? Oh yes. Along with Czech agent Lieutenant Jan Dimick, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, they later met in the House of Commons on November 25th. A second Commons meeting on October 24th, 1987 served to strengthen mutual recognition and the deepening of trust. I would assume then Jan Dimick butt-fucked Corbyn. You know, just to earn his trust. The communist handlers noted down Corbyn's character traits in the document, which is likely to have been seen by President Vladimir Putin, a senior KGB figure at the time. That's just an assertion. No one cares. You don't need to read secret documents to know what Corbyn is, unfortunately. So, the report's author said, owns dog and fish, behaviour is reserved and courteous, British, however occasionally explosive when speaking in defence of human rights. Understandably. In fact, I cannot fault Jeremy Corbyn's passion when it comes to human rights. I can't. Because I tend to agree with him on that. But his way of approaching it now, the identitarian aspect, discriminating against things, or trying to reach, and this just makes you look like a terrible leader, reaching out to extremist groups, which you've done on multiple occasions. Okay, there was a thing, I know the Tories handled this badly, there was a smear against Sadiq Khan. He shared a platform with Solomon something, and I can't remember his last name, but the guy was Solomon Ghazi? Was that it? And 9 times he'd done this, he'd shared this platform. Corbyn should have stepped in with Khan and said, you should immediately denounce this guy. Do it, so then the Conservatives don't have anything against you. They don't have anything on him. And of course, yes, they won. The dirty tactics of the Conservatives were horrible. But the platform he shared with was with someone that was a bit bad, really. You know, the whole ISIS thing. Not ideal when you want to make it in politics to share a platform with such an extremist. And Corbyn has this horrible trait of trying to reach out to get people from those extremist groups to talk. What we've seen now, though, in politics and with activism in this country is that you can reach out to those extremist groups. If you see the fantastic video of Mog trying to reason with some activists, jump on Discord, Mitch, and he tried to reach out to these groups, but in the process of doing that, he just looks really, really weak because he's not getting anywhere. And the group, okay, so the groups he's talking to now, Mog tried to talk to these extreme left people who just wanted to shout him down, call him a Nazi, homophobe, misogynist. Then you could hear him. I'm not here to talk. I'm not here to talk. I don't want to talk. And yes, it's Rilia. That's where you are. Hello, Mitch.
Hello.
How are you doing, darling?
I'm fine, love.
What do you think about this Soviet thing? I'm just going to put some earphones in so there's no echo.
Well, interesting. I think it's Dermich. There was an R in there. I think the C is a ch.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. But from what I've read, he claims he talked to a diplomat. And there was a Czech guy who was a liaison in the 90s who was also in the military, the Czech military, in 1986, and said that, well, there was a lot of agents undercover in the embassy in 1986. So it could have been... There's a few ways you can see this. Either A, he genuinely thought he was talking to a diplomat who was actually an undercover spy, or he did talk to a diplomat but disclosed things that he shouldn't have disclosed to this diplomat, who could then send this information to his government.
Yeah.
Then there's the other one where you can say that he knew that this person was a spy or had an inkling and decided to share his information because he was sharing information not just on agents, you know, about all these investigations, because since the 1970s, they'd been rooting out a lot of communists because of the Cambridge Five, if anybody's ever heard about that.
Yeah.
Stalin had basically infiltrated the British establishment and other areas in the 30s, and it just got worse and worse and worse. They had a very strong network, and they were actually his best spies, I think.
Really?
Yeah, that's why we had to crack down on it, and for good reason.
Oh, this would have been embarrassing. It's so good that Corbyn back then was just a backbencher.
Exactly. But that's the thing, he's a backbencher, so it's not like not got some kind of link to the party or in any that can be used.
Who was the Labour leader of the of the opposition at the time? Was it?
I think it was. Wait, Labour leader. 86.
I've got a face of a guy in my head. He's a bald guy, and I can't remember what his name is.
Let me have a look.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was the thing you were talking about with the Falklands? He wanted to give it back.
Somebody. Yeah, he wanted to either give it back or we share it together, which is ridiculous.
A timeshare, huh?
Yeah, let's have a look.
I know Corbyn wants to find the non-violent solutions to this stuff, but that's
they started it, not us.
Exactly, it's not a solution. And this one, I've been reading it more and more. It's just I wish I'd pulled the images up. I can't.
It was Neil Kinnock.
Neil Kinnock, that's it. Yes. That gormless idiot.
Yeah.
So glad he wasn't Prime Minister.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Right, so the part about Czechoslovakia is that, and the reason why it's quite important is that it was actually it was considered a puppet state for President Gorbachev.
It was, yeah.
I think he used it for something. Dissidents were being imprisoned there. That's what it was.
And Corbyn was working against them. He was providing information on anti-communist activity.
So for someone,
and it's like he's supposed to be for the people.
Exactly.
The people are obviously being oppressed, but because they're being oppressed by people he's sympathetic with, regardless of what they're doing. The Czech Republic was one of the Czechoslovakia at the time.
Yeah, Czechoslovakia. Yeah.
They were one of the worst ones. Regardless of what they. Not as bad as East Germany or Romania, but they weren't exactly perfect. But I think they had one of the strongest dissident groups, though. That's why the Russians had to get in there in the 1960s.
Yeah,
have tanks in Prague.
Yeah, I've got to address Cthulhu here, Prophet Cthulhu. You really should see if you can get H-Bomber Guy on this, as he's full-on Labour. Me, I'm social libertarian. I know H-Bomber Guy is, but I'm not. I know you're a Labour supporter, aren't you? Because we've talked about this before.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, not anymore.
Well,
I mean, I liked Corbyn when he first joined because I thought, well, this has some potential as long as he doesn't talk to the wrong people. But now I think not only did he talk to the wrong people, but I think he was already like that. And
do you think
this just shows? Even Sargon liked him before he showed his true colours. Yeah,
he hasn't. Obviously, with the recent discrimination stuff that they've been hit with by the Equalities Commissions every single time, multiple times that the Labour Party have been hit with it, and yet they're constantly telling. And I know I don't like the Conservatives, I really don't. But you're making them look. You're making them look good. You make them look good by this behaviour. And as far as like Labour go, I think they just make Theresa May look, and she is weak when she stands up in PMQs to answer questions. Her voice is just not. Okay, this is why Cameron was a better Prime Minister, because he would happily stand there and just shout you down. I've linked some in the description of this because I watched PMQs and I was hoping for tonight. I was hoping for this to be mentioned in it, but I was like, I hope this comes up next week. I really do, because I think
they weren't closet dictatorships; they were openly dictatorships.
Yeah,
everybody knew.
I want to know what Corbyn's views are on Castro then.
I think he liked him, didn't he?
Did he? Oh, let's find out. Okay.
I'm pretty sure when he died, he praised him. But it's interesting. I just don't believe. I mean, there's the two stories that could be legit. He didn't know he was talking to a spy. Yeah. But then why was he sharing information with somebody who he didn't know was a spy?
This is why.
And if it was a diplomat, why was he talking to this diplomat about British information?
I'm inclined to also think he's more of a hapless idiot. He trusts so much that he's just willing to put it all on the table. This is why I'm so glad he wasn't elected to deal with the Brexit negotiations, because it's been said multiple times he'd accept the lowest offer. That's not what people want. And by the way, he said of Castro, he was a champion of social justice. Yes. That's yes. Fidel Castro, a stubborn defiance of the US struck a chord with many oppressed people in Latin America. Right.
You know what's interesting about the Brexit thing? You think he would like have shifted the Labour towards Brexit, but he didn't, because he was a Brexit supporter for years.
He was.
Old Labour was the anti-EU party, not the Tories. It was the Tories that got us into Europe.
Mm-hmm. And John Major's
Although I don't know if
us in it.
Yeah, he did. Although I don't know if there were other Labour Party members who wanted us in there, like maybe some of their leaders and prime ministers wanted us in, because we did apply a few times, but I don't know which governments applied it. It could have been one Tory government, could have been one Labour government. I don't know, but
this is amazing.
Like, you still have Labour people like Skinner. You know, he's still anti-EU.
Oh, Skinner, yeah, he is. He does.
If only he was 20 years younger.
Oh, he's 85, isn't he?
I know.
The guy is. I've watched. Okay, so I was looking up Dennis Skinner. For those who don't know who Dennis Skinner is, he's a Labour member. He sits on the corner of the bench.
The original troll of politics.
Not just, he's been kicked out of the Commons 10 times.
Because he has a thing. We have the tradition where we knock on the door. That the royals knock on the door. Well, people representing the royals.
Yeah,
and that's
black rod.
To show the opening of Parliament. Yeah, the black rod. Yeah, and he always trolls it every time they walk in.
Yeah, he comes up with some real zingers. He's actually a proper shitlord. But he slammed.
Yeah.
He got kicked last time. He got kicked out. He called David Cameron Dodgy Dave and refused to retract it.
Dodgy Dave. Yeah, he did. Yeah,
that clip is funny. He got kicked out. The thing with Dennis Skinner is he is still a powerful man as far as what he believes and his passion for the politics. And he makes Corbyn look so fucking stupid because he supports Brexit, but he sits technically he's on the front bench, but I think it's more because he can't do the stairs anymore.
He's always sat there for years. To be fair,
I think it used to be Nick Clegg's spot, but he seems to have taken it.
I think he's always sat there. Like apparently, he had to really rush in to stop the SNP from getting into his seat.
Well, there was
he's just always sat there.
There's a parliamentary procedure that if you want to reserve a seat within Parliament, you put your name on a card on the bit behind your chair, like they do on trains. They do it, like that.
Yeah.
But you have to be there for morning prayers. I don't know if Skinner is a religious man. But as fascinating as Skinner is, the thing about Corbyn is amazing. He genuinely. I know. I just can't tell if he's trying to do it to undermine the country, like he's trying to be an anarchist or something, or whether he's just trying to be trusting, which if anything shows how weak he is when it comes to things like negotiating, to the point where he could be.
It's too much of a pattern to just be naive, right? Don't you think?
I do. By the way, the picture I showed with him with the commie flags, was that actually a thing that happened?
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it?
I saw the cropped image. I remember it because they used to have lots of this image of him cropped giving at a rally, but the image blown out was him with commie flags, and I found that straight away, but I couldn't remember what the rally was that he was doing that at.
It was just one of many typical rallies, wasn't it?
He goes to a lot. He goes to a lot of rallies. And I don't floor him for his human rights activism. I really don't. But the way he's going about it now,
human rights from his perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, his perspective now and his behaviour towards it, I can't support. So when he got elected as the leader of the opposition, do you still think that? Because when we did talk about this, he was the right leader for the party, but the wrong time. Do you think that it should have been Chuka Umunna, Dave Miliband?
None of them. I mean, they're all just a bunch of corporatist, like progressives. Although David Miliband was the best man for the job, let's be honest.
That was 5 years before him, wasn't it? Though
he would have won actually that election.
Why did Ed Miliband win? He looked like Wallace.
I think it was. I don't. Maybe he was slightly more left than Ed. I mean, David. I mean, it wasn't like the things that he said wasn't bad or anything. He just was. Look at him, and I don't know. There were other things. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Poffit, you are quite right. The best Dennis Skinner moment was Thatcher's state funeral. I remember that.
Actually, he's done that several times. I mean, there was a metaphoric funeral when she was about to leave, and he was like, "The bell tolls for thee, Maggie."
He's such a dick.
He is a troll.
So Poffit Cthulhu also writes, Corbyn was a reaction to neoliberalists, which is like the Hillary Clinton loss. Really, the problem is that politics of fear creates extremes, and that's true. Which is why I think when, for example, Brexit happened, people say that the Remain camp used fear, which they did, because they used misleading data. They did, absolutely. Both sides. It was absolutely embarrassing. I made my decision to vote Leave because of what my own research. But when when it came with the Remain team, watching how they were trying to deal with it, if they wanted to win, first of all, they should not have used faulty statistics, like faulty predictions from groups that themselves have been known to bullshit it or get it wrong repeatedly. And to address Dowley, Labour did burn down Reform once. They called it New Labour. That worked out so well. It was
got them elected, but then in the end it didn't work out long term.
Actually, that's just proof of what happens when you elect someone who has absolutely no idea what they're doing or any experience in any office whatsoever, which was Tony Blair in 1996 or 7.
The guy before him, he died, would have been a much better Prime Minister.
Who was that?
Oh God, he died. Tony Blair.
I just remember with Tony Blair, all the crap he did.
I've talked about the guy.
What? Kinnock?
He preceded... Who did he precede? John Smith, that's it. He died in 1994.
Yeah.
It's funny that a Scotsman died, replaced by another Scotsman, who then left and replaced by another Scotsman.
Yeah, we like our Scotsman.
I never knew he was Scottish.
Yeah.
I mean, he's more Scottish than Tony Blair, but Tony Blair's still Scottish.
Is he?
You know.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's just posh Scottish. A lot of posh, like, Scottish schools have them speaking English accents. It's just how it is. I don't know why.
You mean civilised, right?
Well, yeah, civilised, obviously.
I love how knowledgeable Poffit is, because it's quite
stunning. I think he started that rebranding in many ways.
Yeah, I remember the cringy adverts with that things are only going to get better with music. And I remember thinking, when I was watching them back about a year ago, I was like, yeah, that didn't work out so well, did it? Oops.
He was a much more, from what I've read, he's a much more cautious, John Smith was a more cautious leader. Whereas Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were the more, radical ones, as in terms of decision making. I think he would have been a much better Prime Minister, to be honest.
Oh dear, David Cameron is gonna. I feel bad for him because he to address Poffit again, the Laird of Kensington. He I think I pronounced that wrong. He could have been such a good leader. He was very direct with his answers when he was a leader of the opposition, and he still was when he was in charge. And he had the worst to be the Prime Minister during that particular time with the crash. You just
Gordon Brown. Yeah, I do feel sorry for him.
Just got to feel sorry for him. Just sorry.
I liked how distant he was with Bush. That was the first thing I saw when he put him in his little golf cart and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Do you remember that?
Yes, I've seen that. That is hilarious.
Completely different. I think Bush thought, "Oh, another British Prime Minister. I guess we were going to be in love together." No, no, George. This is not how we do things with me. I can't do his voice; it's too deep and
Gordon
depressing.
Brown.
Gordon.
Yeah, his voice is quite. But I don't know why he does that jaw thing. I've often wondered.
I
about
thought
that.
he did. Well, doesn't he have he has one eye, right? Maybe.
Yeah, he's blind in one eye, I think. Yeah.
I never even noticed, to be honest.
I don't even know how that happened. We're getting off.
I was young, I think.
So, to summarise Corbyn, do you think he's a traitor to his country, or do you think he's just an idiot?
Well, it's still treason, whether he meant it or not.
I do wonder if anything will come of it, though, don't you?
No. It was so long ago, and I don't know if we'll even be able to prove that anything came of.
Yeah, it's just records.
What he did.
If anything, it's just paperwork at this point.
It's reckless behaviour at the very least. At most, it is a legit undermining of our country.
Yeah, I still think that's probably the funniest thing now. If anything, it just weakens his credibility as a human rights activist to then go against people's rights.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, is he really all for human rights, or is he just for what the communists think human rights are? I guess we've all got human rights if we don't have any at all, right?
Yeah, well, that sounds very socialist. Gordon Brown broke his jaw playing rugby. That's why it happened. That actually makes a lot more sense. It does make me wonder. Do you think that? What do you think's going to happen over the next 4 years? Do you think Theresa May's going to leave, or do you think Corbyn's going to somehow win or lose or whatever?
He won't win. She might not be Prime Minister for very long.
Yeah,
but we
there's
don't
already
know.
talks
I
about
mean,
it, isn't there?
even Thatcher lasted 3 terms, or 3, whatever we call it.
Yeah, but she was a far stronger Prime Minister when she started. She won her election before she went in. She wasn't just given the job.
But she didn't last long after the 3rd term, did she? Only 2 years. That's like a quarter of her term in office, right? Yeah.
I would say that as far as like she goes, she earned her place. I'm not saying May didn't.
They'll have to replace her. If they get Mog, they'll win. Hell, even if they get fucking Boris, they'll win.
You know how they'll lose? If Gove wins.
Go on. Oh, Gove would never win.
If
Surely
that
not.
gormless little shit wins, it's done.
Jeremy Hunt. Yeah, definitely leads into Corbyn if it's him.
Yeah.
The most hated. He's got to be the most hated, apart from like some of the fascist politicians that we have. I can't think of many people on the right who hated more than him.
Yeah.
Jeremy Cunt. Do you remember that on the BBC?
Yeah, I remember.
He didn't even mean it. I don't think he meant it, but
no, I don't.
It came out.
I think with Labour, and their front bench is a perfect example of this. If they don't ditch the identity crap and focus solely on policy.
Who've they got? Who's Labour got? They've got Dennis Skinner, but he's too old.
Yeah, McDonnell.
I mean, he's old school socialist, so he's not, and British socialist. Labour was never fully like 100% like Corbyn is now.
No, they weren't.
They were anti-communist.
Well, come on, their name is Labour. They're supposed to represent the workers.
I would say Attlee was closer to Orwell than he is Corbyn. But
so front bench would include, obviously McDonnell, who pulled out a little red book.
Communist.
He pulled it out and gave it to George Osborne. And George Osborne looked at it, opened it and said, look, it's been signed.
By Stalin.
Probably, yeah. Either him or Mao. He's got Emily Thornberry.
Mao.
He's got Diane Abbott. I don't know who... There's a lady who sits next to Corbyn, this black lady. I don't know who she is. It's not Diane
Abbott. It's got to be Abbott, right?
No, this one's a younger, prettier version of someone.
That's still not very pretty, is it?
No, but it's prettier than Abbott. Come on.
Let's have a look. Here we are, Shadow Cabinet. Let's have a look at him.
Oh, God.
Okay. Oh, there she is. I know who you mean. Let's have a look at her.
Who is she and what is
she? Is called Kate Osamor. I think that's how you pronounce it.
What's her shadow job?
State for International Development. Let's have a look.
That dead silence you just heard says everything.
Well, she's new. I've never heard of her.
The only so with new people, if they get put in the shadow cabinet, you have to worry straight away. Because I just
hope that she's qualified. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. You're not putting unless you're putting together an actual team of people who are qualified, rather than what I know he's done, and that's create, I believe, a shadow cabinet that is more inclusive and truly reflects gender and racial blah 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 blah.
She read third world studies at uni. What? And then worked for 15 years in the NHS and was a practice manager.
Okay, so she's actually got some decent experience.
She's got brains. She's Nigerian though.
I might have put her
That's
in,
why she's so successful.
She probably would have been better off with Shadow Health. Who's Shadow Health?
It's I don't know yet. Let's have a look. Oh, it's Jonathan Ashworth.
Oh, is it? Ooh.
She seems all right. She seems smart. I mean, you don't become a GP if you're not smart, and she is Nigerian, and they tend to be pretty
actual
successful
intelligence.
here.
I'm not going to criticise that. So we've got the Shadow Cabinet.
Third world studies, and then became a doctor. That takes brains. I'm just saying.
Chunky guy. Oh, deputy. The deputy's Tom Watson. Oh, I always see him rubbing his hands together.
Oh, he looks like a communist.
Okay, so you got John McDonnell, Diane Abbott, Emily Thornberry, Rebecca Long Bailey.
You know what? I always thought Tom Watson was McDonnell. I didn't know McDonnell was the old skinny white man.
Yeah, you would have believed it, right?
That isn't Jeremy.
So you've got Keir Starmer, Shadow Secretary of State, or Sir Keir Starmer, if I remember correctly. Shadow Secretary of State for exiting the European Union. So obviously his job dies in like a year. Angela Rayner, Secretary of State for Education. Richard Bergen, I know who he is because I've seen him in Parliament a couple of times. Baroness Smith, surprised that he'd have someone with the word Baroness or Lord even, which he has 2 of those.
Yes, got Lord Bassam.
He doesn't support that chamber, so that's interesting. I'll be honest. Okay, so two people look like they might have downs at the back. Opposition Chief Whip and Shadow Secretary of State for Defence. Not going to criticise you too much. Seriously, one of them looks like a fatter version of the blind guy.
Who's the whip?
Chief Whip, Nick Brown.
Nick Brown, oh yeah.
Yeah. Then you got Shami.
I'm not scared of him. If he was my chief whip, I would just undermine him any chance I got.
Oh, right.
For those who don't know what a whip is, he's the person who whips all the party into line.
Yeah, he gets the message out.
Tow it.
The thing is, it's a white man. Are you sure you want a white man to be delivering that message? So the one that I really meant, Dawn Butler. She sits next to Corbyn a lot. Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities.
Ugh.
I immediately take issue with her job for obvious reasons, so I'll leave it.
It should be abandoned. All those fucking social justice jobs should be gone.
Yeah.
Don't even create one for men. In fact, let's just create one for like human rights in general.
Actually, there's someone I like on here, Shami Chakrabarti. I actually quite
like
her.
Her. She's alright.
Yeah, she's
a bit of a virtue signaler, though.
She is, but she's quite good in debates. I quite enjoy watching her debate people.
Oh yeah, she's alright. Attorney General, so she's law, like Supreme Court stuff then, right? Yeah.
Okay. This is why you vote Green Party.
I agree with
That's
that.
interesting.
Okay.
Prophet votes for the Green Party. That's interesting.
Baroness Chakrabarti, imagine that. They'll have their own Baroness Vorsi.
She is Baroness Chakrabarti, isn't she?
Is she?
I think she is, isn't she? She got voted into that chamber, didn't she?
I don't like Baroness Vorsi, though.
Oh, Vorsi's... Oh, she's brain dead. She once told... Okay, so she once told Jeremy Corbyn... not Jeremy Corbyn, David Cameron...
Oh, she is? Yeah, you're right.
She once told David Cameron that he shouldn't speak on Muslim matters because he's ignorant. When he pointed out that Muslim communities needed to do more to tackle extremism, she said they did, but there's no evidence to support that. So I did my research on that shit.
She calls herself right wing.
Okay, so before I finish this, because I went for an hour and I'm quite surprised I managed this long. I'm really grateful you came on, by the way. Is there anything you'd like to say before I end it? Like, shill your channel, maybe?
I told you Shami is a bloody... what's the word? Fucking... What did I say?
Virtue
signaler. Opposes grammar schools on the grounds of social divisiveness.
It's not social...
And yet her son goes to Dulwich College, which is exclusive.
No, Shami.
She's not the only one who does that.
Oh, dear. Okay. Would you like to shield your channel before I finish
Grammar
this?
schools... Yeah, before I say that, though, grammar schools actually got a lot of working class people into the middle class. So they don't actually divide.
My town... Okay, so before you shill your channel, okay, my town... I grew up in Reigate. I grew up in Smallfield and Reigate because my parents broke up. Reigate has two secondary schools. Well, yeah. One is Reigate Secondary. The other is Reigate Grammar School. They are within half a mile of each other. I could run between them within a couple of minutes. But we all got on with each other. And yes, Cthulhu 2020, make America frightened again. Well, it might be Cthulhu and Magog. We're still working out things.
With Fright. Ghastly, yeah.
Yes. So, did you want to shill your channel? Because I'll link it in the description afterwards.
I'm Mitch. I used to be Charming Man 93, but with a slight difference. Please sub to me.
Gibbs subs. Gibbs. Okay.
Gibbs me all the subs. And Shami Chakrabarti is a virtue signaler, but whatever, she's alright.
And Jeremy Corbyn is a repeated offender, helpless idiot, and possibly
he's
a traitor.
Russian spy.
He is Russia, okay?
He is, yeah. Thing is, you know what they were saying? Because Putin was a senior member of the KGB, he would have seen that.
He would have. Yeah, I read it in the article. It did sort of make me think, Corbyn doesn't really...
I thought the Telegraph one was much better than the Sun one, though. That was a much better...
Yeah, it was. I went with the Daily Mail because it was like I had that in the Sun, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, we'll just go with those. Okay, so I'm going to end this, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to say any last words? Just one or two?
Moist.